Twisters was number one at the box office. Mrs. Pops and I contributed to that number, kind of as I predicted. We went to go see this in theaters. I want to tell you what I think about it. If you like the original film, whether you'll like this or not, and it's Glen Powell becoming like a new number one star in this Hollywood town. Anyway, let's talk about this movie. All right, I'm Pops, and yeah, I remember seeing Twister in the theater. And after years of reviewing movies, it's kind of fun to go back to a film that I love so much and enjoy rewatching. Yet, as a critic, I had to admit, put the link in the description for that review of me admitting I love watching Twister, but I also have to admit there's a lot of dumbness in that film. There's a lot of dumb things that happen. So, if you like Twister, will you like Twisters? What actually happens? Those kinds of things. Let's get right to this film. All right, we'll meet Kate. The film centers around Kate. She's a storm chaser, or was 5 years ago, when she and a little team of scientists went out on basically an experiment that sounds an awful lot like, I don't know, the last movie, but she has a Dorothy callback there with a machine, Dorothy 5, with the little probes that are going to go up. But she's concocted this formula, which is basically like an absorption of the water that they can kind of get up into their tornado. It will absorb the moisture and basically just fizzle out. So her and this team do this in this opening sequence. They go out, they have this big thing, but the tornado itself is massive compared to what they expected. It overtakes the team, and she basically suffers from survivor guilt, doesn't want any part of storm chasing anymore because basically this film has no problem killing people. It was so much more traumatic than the first film. So the other character here you see a little bit off to the left there, his name is Javier. He is the other person that survives. He didn't actually go out into harm's way. He was more the guy that would stay back, monitor the computers. He also survives. He finally convinces her to go and join up the bro science team that you see in the background, where they have this radar technology that he learned a little bit about when he was in the military. He has this quote corporate funding, corporate sponsorship, and Kate is sort of she's kind of an amalgam between the Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton, but she's kind of the tornado whisperer, right? She can just tell by the weather patterns, things like that, the way Bill Paxton's character did. She has a talent that I guess very few, if nobody else, seems to have. He taps her, convinces her to go, and going out right away, one of the things they do well is they kind of actually have a more believable PTSD with her, what she had gone through before. She lost so many people close to her. It was very traumatic. This was done way better than I thought Helen Hunt's character. By the way, Mrs. Pops called me out on the Helen Hunt hate. I don't really hate her per se. I've just never been that impressed. I think she basically plays the girl boss version from the 90s. And I just never felt that impressed with her as a performer. I thought she was okay. And this was at least a more dynamic character for this actress, which, by the way, is another problem because she's kind of got this dime a dozen white girl look. Yeah, I'm racist. I don't have a problem saying it. They all look alike. What's the deal with this look, Hollywood? A bunch of these white girls have this exact same look, expression through most of the film. She's not given much to work with, but what she does a great job because she at least has emotional PTSD and has to overcome some of that to press on and then find her love again of storm chasing and saving other people. All right, so the star of the show is Glen Powell's character, who basically is kind of like the YouTuber's dream, right? He's handsome, he's charismatic, he's fun, and he's doing some crazy gig on YouTube where he's running into tornadoes and they're documenting it, and they're like, they got fans, they're selling t-shirts, whatever. And he's like this cowboy alpha male, kind of the extension of the Maverick character. And it was by far the best part of the film. Actually, almost all of the film is put on his back. It's him in the visual effects department. That's pretty much this film. Like I said, if you like the first movie, this is a movie for you because it's pretty much the exact same story, right? Tragedy, scientists getting pulled back into it, go out on an expedition, reluctant failure, problems, team changes, dynamics change. Oh, we have a solution to the problem. In the meantime, a massive attack destroys a big crowded area. And then at the end, we have the solution, but we have this massive storm that's really way bigger than expected. Can they overcome or not? And then a little bit of love interest, tension and stress and anxieties and stuff, but never to a fault. I actually enjoyed all that. All right, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but let me just say, compared to the first film, I didn't feel like this one had as many interesting and engaging characters. They have moments, I think, that are all fine, but in the first film, they were so interesting. I mean, you loved these characters like Dusty. You loved the characters that were getting, hit by debris and they were crashing their trucks and their, maps are rolled up. And it seemed way more interesting and dynamic than the people that are in this movie. But let's face it, all of the Twister franchise, if they want to call it a franchise, is all about the tornadoes and the effects. These tornadoes and effects, they're amazing. They're truly spectacular. They look really good over and over again. You're seeing stuff that's going to fly around. You're seeing crazy things happen to each character, stuff to jump out of, things being thrown around. It gets to the absurdity of all, which we're going to get after the spoilers. But if you liked all that, you're going to like the stuff in this movie. All right. So with that, let me get to some more spoilers and say again, I think if you like Twister and you want to turn your brain off for a minute and have a good time for about an hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes, this is a film that will entertain you. That's kind of how we felt. We felt entertained. And yet then we have our whole list of grievances, which we'll kind of now at least get through a little bit. And they will include some of Mrs. Pop's grievances, which were kind of different than mine, which I found very interesting. So here we go. All right, we're going to get into some of the spoilers now. And yeah, this was one of the ones right out of the gate. They have a little bit of a misdirection in the trailer because this opening rodeo sequence that you saw in the trailer is actually the middle of the movie where it attacks like a big crowded area. And Mrs. Pop saw this coming right away. All the alarms going off. She's like, oh man, it's going after a rodeo. So it kind of goes after the rodeo in the sense of it creates some chaos. But for me, it took us out of the moment. We actually were discussing this a little bit. Like it felt weird to have so many people who live in Oklahoma who have no idea how to react in a tornado situation. For instance, it makes sense at the hotel that people coming in from out of town don't know what to do. And there's a little joke about the one girl, oh, it's not really a tornado. It's not really a tornado. Of course, you can see this thing right outside the window. However, dumb citizen thing. This is way too many people who don't know how to react. Only our storm chaser people is the ones that have clues. It was way too much, way too much. I loved all of the YouTuber guy type stuff. This Tyler Owens, the tornado wrangler, over the top thing, except for the fact that they go too far with the truck and then him driving into a tornado. So there's one quick comment about the truck having extra weight on it, but then it's all based on they have these couple of shots where he has this button and he has these augers that dig down into the ground. Even if it's 3 or 4 feet, it wouldn't. I mean, a tornado is literally lifting buildings and machinery. Like the fact that this auger is going to hold him in the ground like that was past. It's just completely absurd and ridiculous. And you have to be able to just completely shut your brain off and not question why certain things are getting sucked up and certain things are not getting sucked up. And oh, by the way, you can shoot fireworks up into this thing, but you can't get the little things, the Dorothy things. You can't get those to go where you want them to go. Like you've got to turn your brain off. The film will not work if you overthink it. It is dumb fun part 2. It is indeed. it is a complete sequel. The funny thing is, I like this a lot because I never felt like we didn't have any weird cheeky cameos or anything like that. We all had just, there wasn't like a weird Helen Hunt's character or Bill Paxton's character referenced or anything other than the Dorothy stuff. So this all worked really well and really just gave you what you want. You have pretty much a recycling. That's the opening sequence that turns sideways for them. It gives you some of the stuff that you wanted from the first film, but not. It just didn't feel cheap. It just felt like another adventure about tornadoes. I don't like that they called it Twisters, and this is the twins reference they do in the opening trailer. So it implies that this is kind of the big thing of the story, and it's really not. It's just one sequence where they make twins, and they're like, woohoo! And then, of course, there's more to the story of what actually happens, but it's just a lot more of the exact same story over again with just cool effects and crazy things. So the homages that come into play tend to be like just quick little shots that are reminiscent, like this one. They're holding on to the thing very similar to the well shot at the end of the first movie. That the hotel thing is, and some of the sequences around the rodeo are reminiscent of the drive-through. Of course, the final sequence has a movie theater, which literally the back of the building flies open. That tends me to lead to the biggest complaint. Mrs. Pops was just like totally frustrated. Glen Powell's character at the end of the movie literally has his boot under a seat. This boot is holding him from being sucked up, and he's holding another girl. It's completely insane how many people are trying to hold other people from getting sucked up. Like the tornado and its abilities to suck people up. The film creates a few rules about how low you stand, and if you get up out of the area, it can just grab you and lift you. But the absurdity on every other level it was just distracting. Special effects, again, can't say enough about it. It was great fun, great stuff. They just go for like just crazy effects. The fire and all of that just got to be pretty absurd at the end of the film, and they teased too much of that in the trailer, I think. But I don't think it's not really like you lose anything relative to like being disappointed at the film or anything like that. I think that you're still going to enjoy the shots for what they were. So overall, it's the same as the first movie. Let's just be honest. Like this strikes me as just being as rewatchable as the first movie. It's a little more slow in the beginning because you have this more drawn out disaster sequence. And so in the first film, it's just a tornado hits, kills Joe's parents. Boom, there you go. You're off and running to the current. This was a little more drawn out, and I don't care enough about the characters to necessarily feel an emotional grief about losing those characters, but those characters at least had some a couple quips and some interesting characteristics that were kind of way more than all the bro science characters. There's only one who's basically just a jerk. And by the way, we have no idea what happens to some of these characters. By the way, there's this massive segment of the movie where Glen Powell's tracking her down and they're going to talk science. Well, he's abandoned all of his team somewhere. She's not with any of the people other than the one guy. It's like we just take the movie, put it on pause for a minute. We're going to do this. It was just like, okay. So again, this is that patent 2 to 3 stars, depending on where you land on your love of disaster, tornado movies, things like that. This is rewatchable, dumb fun for me. I'm totally cool with that type of experience. And I can see why people would want to see it in a theater with the sound and the visual effects and all of that. So that's my general take on it. Not surprising it did well, but obviously with Deadpool and Wolverine, I think it's going to be kind of short lived. Most people will probably want to go see stuff like that. But it did well enough to do, hopefully, make the studio happy, because it was a good movie in the sense that it was entertaining. So don't get a lot of that. It's not woke. It's not weird agendas. There's no climate change lecture or anything like that. The director is phenomenal. Whoever directed this guy, I'm not familiar at all with this director. So I'm hopeful that this guy could, his name is Lee Isaac Chung, and he could be in line to get other opportunities because he did a fantastic job. He really, really did. And he seemed like he could hold his own to do bigger and better projects. So anyway, that's my take. Let me hear from you guys. Thanks. I'm Pops.